So in this video, we're going to be talking about the Rena v. Bonta California handgun roster case and how the Supreme Court's recent ruling in Bruin is helping to eliminate the handgun roster. So let's talk about this. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think California's handgun roster is unconstitutional, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also, I want to give a shout out to one of the main supporters of this channel, which is USCCA. Through your membership, you get training, education, and self-defense liability protection. So if you carry a firearm, I highly recommend you take a look into USCCA, and I'll put a link to them down in the details section. So like I said in the intro, in this video, we're going to be talking about the recent Supreme Court ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin, and what impact that case has had on another really important case, a case in California, which challenges the California handgun roster. This case, Rena v. Bonta, is actually one of the cases I helped with when I was with FPC. It's one of those really important cases. Also, just as a California resident, me living in California, this case is important to me. And recently we saw that there was an amended complaint filed in this case. The amended complaint made the case now a pure challenge to the California handgun roster. It also challenges the state of California's recent passing of a law which bans self-manufacturing of handguns and other firearms as well. And also it's a challenge to the state's new attempt to require 2A organizations and those individuals who bring litigation against the state of California for violating the Second Amendment. It tries to shift the entire cost and fees to those individuals that are suing the state of California. So for those of you not aware, Rena v. Bonta was originally a challenge to California's handgun roster and AB 2847 as well. In the state of California, there is the Unsafe Handgun Act, which lists a bunch of requirements that a handgun must meet and must have to be deemed safe in the state of California and therefore be on the list of safe handguns. Some of those requirements include the handgun being drop safe, and also the handgun must have microstamping technology. This law resulted in a list of safe handguns being created that ordinary law-abiding individuals can walk into a gun store and actually purchase. This list of approved handguns is often called the handgun roster. So for example, a Glock Gen 3 19 is on the safe handgun roster, but a Gen 4 Glock or a Gen 5 Glock is not on that list of approved handguns. You may be thinking to yourself, well, why would a Gen 3 Glock be on there? Why would it be on the list but no new models? A Gen 3 doesn't have any of these features that's requiring it. It doesn't have microstamping. Well, that's because the law, when this was passed, grandfathered in some handguns that were already in production, so they were grandfathered in. So there are some older generations of handguns that are on this list, but also no real new generations of handguns have made it onto the list because microstamping and some of these other requirements don't even exist. However, there are some exemptions from the handgun roster, mainly being law enforcement officers. So law enforcement officers are able to purchase handguns that are not on the roster. Ordinary people can acquire and legally possess off-roster handguns, but usually they have to come into possession of the off-roster handgun by purchasing them on the secondary market from maybe an exempt law enforcement officer or someone who actually came into the state of California with an off-roster handgun, registered it with the state, and then decide they want to get rid of it. So there are some workarounds, there are some ways that the average person can get an off-roster handgun, but it's a little bit harder, and also you are going to pay 2 or 3 times the cost for an off-roster handgun. So as you can see, the handgun roster really does a lot of things, and it also creates a really elitist system where in the state of California, unless you are able to pay insane amounts of money for these off-roster handguns, you can't actually get the handguns that you would want. As if this issue wasn't bad enough, then California went ahead and passed AB 2847 last year. Under this new law, a new requirement was added. Whenever the state adds a new handgun to the roster, 3 of those older non-compliant handguns must be removed from the list. So this puts older generations of handguns at risk. If new handguns are ever added to the list, all of a sudden some of these older handguns that we come to know and love and rely on in the state of California could fall off the list. Then on June 30th of 2022, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed AB 1621 into law. AB 1621 amended and added multiple provisions into the penal code and essentially imposes additional significant burdens on the ability of the ordinary law-abiding individual to be able to engage in lawful self-manufacture or assembly of handguns. Even more concerning, AB 1621 was enacted with an urgency clause in it, meaning that the provision, when it was signed into law by Gavin Newsom, became effective immediately. But the state has not stopped just there. California also passed and Newsom signed into law SB 1327. SB 1327 is the California law which creates fee and liability shifting to 2A organizations and advocates who bring these types of lawsuits against the state of California for their violations of the Second Amendment. This law was passed in California in direct response to the Supreme Court's recent ruling on the Texas SB8 decision and also their ruling in Bruin. So Rena v. Bonta is a challenge to the Unsafe Handgun Act and the implementation of a lot of these other California firearms restrictions, which the state of California has now passed. Now, in prior videos when we talked about Rena, I told you that the judge prior had granted the state of California's motion to dismiss part of the case. The part of the case that was dismissed actually was in regard to the California Unsafe Handgun Act. The court dismissed the Second Amendment challenge to the handgun roster because there was a prior case called Pena, which already was a challenge to the handgun roster and was already decided by the Ninth Circuit. In the Pena case, the Ninth Circuit found that California's handgun roster does not violate the Second Amendment, and in reaching that decision, they relied on interest balancing in the two-step approach. That Ninth Circuit opinion in Pena was also appealed up to the Supreme Court and sought review from the Supreme Court back in 2020, but the Supreme Court denied review. So essentially that led to Pena being the controlling precedent in the Ninth Circuit ever since. Well, as we all know, the Supreme Court recently issued a decision in Bruin, which has completely changed the landscape of Second Amendment litigation going forward. One of the key holdings of the Supreme Court in that decision was the type of analysis that the government regulation is subject to going forward. A regulation must meet the text as informed by relevant history and tradition standard. The Supreme Court in Bruin also expressly rejected the two-step approach, which balances interest, and that was the type of analysis that was used by the Ninth Circuit prior in the Pena case. That means that the Ninth Circuit's decision prior in Pena is no longer valid, and that's exactly what's argued in the amended complaint in Rena. They argue that because of the Supreme Court's recent ruling in Bruin, that prior decision in Rena is no longer valid and this issue needs to be reheard. So because of that, Rena is now moving forward as a pure challenge to the handgun roster, which before that issue was dismissed, but now that can proceed forward. And also they incorporated a challenge to some sort of other handgun restrictions and other laws that were passed in California as well, including that whole fee shifting law. Now I'm going to go a little bit into that in a separate video, so look out for that. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more because I think that deserves some more attention to see exactly what the state of California is doing with that fee shifting. But just understand that is also incorporated in this Rena case. And then they also incorporated the self-manufacture aspect and the restrictions of self-manufacture in the state of California. But I want to bring this case back onto everybody's radar, especially those of you who've been asking me what's going to happen with the handgun roster going forward. Rena, in my opinion, will be very important. It's going to be a very important case in regards to the challenge and the re-challenge to the handgun roster in California. Also, there's another handgun roster case, which is filed by CRPA. That's in a different district. Many of you know that Reno May, another YouTuber, shout out to Reno May. He's a friend of the channel. He's a friend of me. We talk frequently offline. He is one of the plaintiffs in that case. So there is another case that's challenging the handgun roster, different organization, different district, which is good because that means we get two kind of bites at the apple as far as the handgun roster in California. You get two chances at a TRO, two chances at a preliminary injunction, two chances at a trial, maybe two chances at an appeal, things like that. So it kind of just lets us double up a little bit. And hopefully it doesn't really matter which case wins out. As long as the handgun roster is stopped, that's all that really matters. So again, thank you to FBC for litigating the Rena case, for bringing this, amending it, bringing in more important issues as well. And we will definitely be keeping our eyes on this case and see where it goes from here. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment down below and I'll try to answer the best of my ability. Also, like this video and like support the channel. One of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm or fuel Algorit's rhythm. It adds fuel to his jet and signal to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of two-way news. Again, I want to thank everybody who likes, comments, subscribes, who hits the notification bell, who shares this video. You guys are directly impacting this video, impacting this channel, and helping me to reach it and educate more people than I could ever do on my own. So again, thank you so much for all of your support. And as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.